In a competitive world, average won't cut it. The Success Launch Point shows you how to stand out, deliver massive value, and rise above the crowd. With on-demand courses, expert coaching, and a community focused on growth, you'll accelerate your career and your paycheck. It's time to level up. Check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And a very interesting situation, the national, before we get to some particulars, in particular New York City. But on a national scale, we increasingly have almost like one of those bad sci-fi movies, like the one figure's getting bigger through like something, whatever, and the other one's shrinking. And that's what I see that I've never seen to this degree in my entire lifetime. Trump on the national, the international stage, rocking it out with the Japanese prime minister, closing deals, having fun. And then you just look at the Democratic Party. It just looks like, and yes, you can say Schumer, yeah, he's a has-been, he's scared shitless about his job, but it's also like Murphy and others. They're just petulant and pointing to things that no one really gives a shit about, like the ballroom. Really? That's your big problem? Your thoughts?
Yeah, there was a great comment on the news this morning where someone was saying, if your biggest concern is the White House ballroom, you have a really great life. Because it's so minor to be complaining about that when there's actual problems going on. And a lot of them are caused by the Democrats refusing to reopen the government. You've got a whole bunch of government workers. Now, last week, a lot of them missed a paycheck. Military is about to miss a paycheck. Air traffic controllers had missed a paycheck, and they're starting to call in sick and not show up for work. The largest union representing government workers issued a statement telling the Democrats to sign on to the continuing resolution and open the government. For the Democrats to lose the unions, that's big.
Yeah, it's also big about SNAP benefits. I believe Friday will no longer happen. That is not going to play well in Peoria, is it?
No, it's not. For those of our listeners who aren't familiar, SNAP is the official name for food stamps. I'm always surprised to find that there's still people that aren't aware of the branding. But yes, SNAP expires October 31st, which is Friday. So as of Saturday, there are no food stamp benefits. And that problem is compounded by the fact that you have so many furloughed government workers who were living paycheck to paycheck, and now they were going to be relying on those SNAP benefits, and now they're not going to be there either. And you had 20 Democratic attorneys general today file a lawsuit against the Trump administration to keep SNAP going. It's not his job to keep SNAP going. It's the Congress's job to appropriate the funds. If the Democrats refuse to do their job, you can't then turn around and sue Trump over it.
Yeah, 100% correct. But yes, and it also is going to be, there'll be a lot of splaining to do with the Democratic leadership, talking about how they're the party of caring for the underprivileged, blah, 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 when they can pass the continuing resolution and play for another day. They box themselves into a huge corner. It's like being in high school and thinking someone's not, you're picking a fight with someone, you're thinking that they're not going to call your bluff, and they just did, and you're going, uh-oh. So that's exactly what happened. I think Schumer's
Yep.
officially finished, and you can just pencil in AOC in his spot.
Well, I've said this in the past. Schumer's not up for election until 2029. He's, I believe, 80 already. So by the time 2029 rolls around, I don't think he's running again. I think he's retiring.
You know, yeah, all things being equal, I'd say you're correct, but I believe that he's addicted to power and he wants to go on. And you ever see his wife, I can't blame him. But anyway, yes, he wants to go on into the sunset forever, for
Could be.
eternity.
And and there's
Look at
another thing.
Pelosi; she's like 90.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of folks that are way too old to be in Congress and the Senate, and they need to retire. Let younger people take over. But and that just shows how much these folks don't. And this is bipartisan because we've got some of these folks on the Republican side also. These people don't care about their constituents; they just care about the power.
Yeah, but it's also not just age related. You have AOC. She probably never met someone in her district. Okay, the district's going to hell, and she's out there with Bernie
No,
on the
since
goodwill tour, whatever you want to call it.
since AOC got into Congress, she has been rated every year as the least effective congressperson. To this date, she has never gotten a single bill out of committee. She doesn't know her job. She can't do it. I've said this before, she's a social media influencer who happens to be in Congress.
Correct. It does scare me that I think Ben Shapiro predicted. I don't really take any weight that he thinks she'll be the nominee.
It's very possible. If a lot of it's going to depend on what happens over the next few years. If Mondami wins for mayor of New York, that's a check in her box. If the Democrats get wiped out in the midterms, that's a check against her.
Yep,
And
definitely.
we've got the presidential election in 2028. Depending on how the Democrats do there, it could propel her to stardom or it could be her swan song. So it really depends on how things go for the next few years. But what I find really interesting about this whole situation, and this is, I looked this up, this has actually never happened before. During government shutdowns, the party in power has always taken a hit. They are
Hmm.
they're blamed for the shutdown. They take responsibility. Their polls drop, and it usually costs them seats. This time, polls since the beginning of the shutdown, just this past month, Republican approval has gone up 5%.
Yes, I think that. Well, I think a part of that is that we don't have a monopoly on information anymore. I think if it was 1995 and you had CNN and MSNBC basically in charge of information, being the gatekeeper, might not be the case. I think people are, especially younger people, getting the news from various entities, and I think that it's hard to keep a lie concealed.
It is, but we've talked about this before also. You're also seeing a bigger shift in media, not just with podcasts and online, but you've got new newspapers that have come out, like the New York Sun, that are much more centrist and even to the right. You've got News Nation that redid itself as a news channel. I'm actually getting a lot of information from them because they've gotten very balanced and, very
Actually, it's what
nonpartisan.
we talked about on terrestrial radio. That obviously CNN and the others are obviously not too bright. We always said that was where the golden spot was because people are looking for that. They want
Yes,
something that they're getting, and yeah, on both sides. If it's
and
all like Sean Hannity, yeah, I can't really watch him because it's all meat and potatoes for his base. So anyway, I think you're right about News Nation. I watch it as well, and I think other people watch other outlets. And I think the Democratic Party, I think maybe you have something very correct, Dr. Lobkin. Maybe it is indicative of age that Schumer's still playing in 1995 when that train has left the station.
That's a good point. It could be they are playing the old game and the old rules don't apply anymore. I think
There you
that's
go.
probably why the Democrats are so scared of AOC, because as ineffective as she is as a lawmaker, she understands the new rules. She understands new media. So she's
Hmm.
making them look bad.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. She's totally ineffective and her district's going to shit. But yeah, she knows how to, like you said, she knows how to play social media. I think it is very important. You talk about a party that's looking smaller and smaller. In New York City, you're having Democrats and you talk about their civil war. Well, you have leaders in the party like Jeffries uh, endorsing Manali, who's a communist, let's be clear, anti Semite, could be Muslim extremist. Um, that's not a good brand, especially when you're talking about the basically minority leader and others like Elizabeth Warren, who's a kook, but she's still a leader of the party. That I think is their worst nightmare, him ever coming to power, supported by international money, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the people you just named that are endorsing him, though. These are all folks that their entire career, they've been pretty far to the left, if not extremely left. I think
Mm-hmm.
Jeffries is a little more centrist than Elizabeth Warren, but not much. There is an internal civil war going on. And Andrew Cuomo actually made comments about this today, the fact that it is a silent civil war. The public is actually not seeing, and that includes us, all of the things that are going on behind the scenes. And one of the things that has been reported about Andrew Cuomo is that he had plans to run for president in 2016. And this is, remember, this is years before his disgrace as governor. So he could have been a viable candidate, but the Democratic Party shut him down and told him, "You're not running for president. This is Hillary's turn." So the fact that for years, and we've said this before, the Democratic Party has not had a legitimate primary since 2008. They've been rigging their primaries. This isn't hyperbole. A court case came against the DNC on the 2016 election. And while it was thrown out for lack of standing, it didn't get thrown out before the DNC issued a statement that is on the record. It was sent to the court that basically said, it's our primary. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, no, they are the party of democracy is far from that, but I do think it is problematic for them. They've already in the midst of turmoil. Mondami does not help them because they have to choose. Look at Hochul in New York. She's going to have a tough election, and she just endorsed a commie anti-Semite in New York. I don't know if that's really going to play all that well, but we'll have to find out. Now, another situation of the Democratic Party that they're not digging, and I use digging because they're a party that can't get out of Woodstock, is the kryptonite president, the auto pen president. He's basically kryptonite to anyone that has anything to do with any aspirations, and I find that rather interesting. And that they want nothing to do with him.
No, Biden has been out making speeches, and every time he does, the Democrats cringe. He's digging himself deeper and deeper, doubling down on all of his failed accomplishments. He keeps claiming that, yes, he was in complete control, which everybody knows was not the case. Numerous books have come out about it already, and none of them, ironically, from Republicans or right wingers. These are all folks that were staunch Democrats, staunch left wingers, and they're coming out basically saying he was incompetent. He did not have the mental capacity, and his people basically protected him. Now, one thing I do find funny is we've got a new book on this coming out by Karine Jean-Pierre, and she has gone the other way. Karine Jean-Pierre announced she is leaving the Democratic Party, not because they went too far to the left and not because they protected Joe Biden, but because she says they abandoned Joe Biden when he was loyal to them.
God. Well, you're talking about a Mensa candidate right there. So, and anyone who would read her book, I don't know what to tell you. I'd rather read like the Reader's Digest, but that's just me. But it is really interesting. I'd say I know he's obviously senile, but do you think it still bothers him? I'm sure it hurts Dr. Jill that he's basically branded, and that's one thing Trump is great at, the auto pen president.
It clearly bothers him. I mean, even when somebody suffers from senility, they do have moments of clarity. And there have been times in public where he has been very clear, and he's obviously very upset about what his legacy has become. But now his legacy is about to get even worse because the House Oversight Committee has turned documents over to the DOJ for investigation because they have come across email chains regarding some of these decisions that were signed off by the Autopan, and Joe Biden is nowhere to be seen in the discussion process.
May I ask you a question about that? Because I thought it was pretty interesting from my perspective, at least, when Comer, who has a tendency to go on witch hunts that go nowhere or
yes,
whatever.
He does.
Not very effective, but I thought, okay, another one of his, nonsensical rabbit holes. This has some legs. I don't know if I was Fauci and others, there may not, because isn't it interesting that Hunter's the only one he actually signed off on?
Yeah, there's no doubt that he actually pardoned Hunter Biden, but there are questions now about who else he actually pardoned. And we've found out definitively that those mass pardons, he really didn't have anything to do with. He said in general terms, yes, we will pardon these people in this situation, but a president can't actually do that. A president has to pardon a person. He can't pardon a category. And the people who fit into that category were not determined by Biden. He didn't approve them. And we know this for a fact already. People have testified to this. Again, this was also covered in Original Sin by Jake Tapper. So we know this happened for a fact.
Wasn't it really true what I heard in my car? It was Ted Cruz years ago in Biden's administration. He says you basically have someone asleep at the switch and a bunch of Trotskyites, 20-somethings from Harvard are in charge. I really think that's his administration. And Barack, because I think it was also Barack who could do what he couldn't do when he was actually president, meaning the face of his policies. I think he was certainly an instigator of some of this. It was his dream come true.
Oh, well, I don't know if it was his dream come true. It might have been when Joe was elected, but I think even 6 months, 8 months into his presidency,
you're correct.
It suddenly fell apart for him.
100%. But he thought he'd have carte blanche. He would have a willing dupe, and the senility did not hurt. But you're right; it did blow up in his face. And I think that's another person that his legacy is severely, in my opinion, pretty much gone. That's just
I mean, we talk a lot about how the presidency killed Biden's legacy, but to be perfectly honest, he did not have a great legacy to begin with. We've often talked about the fact that, we like watching old episodes of Johnny Carson. Well, I happened to see one recently where the guest was Milton Berle. Now,
Mhm.
for our younger listeners, Milton Berle, who, of course, the dawn of television, very famous comedian, but the constant running gag was that he stole all of his jokes.
Mhm.
Well, when Johnny was introducing who was going to be on the show, he introduced Milton Berle as the only man who would steal from Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're 100% correct. When I was in Philadelphia, close to Delaware, he was always in the, he's all, even well before he was always a joke. And that's why I think Dr. Jill, sometimes Karma's a bitch, and you hooked your wagon to this moron, let's be honest, right? A grifter moron. And then you finally get the payoff and it blows up. She can't be happy. I bet you it might be elder abuse in that house in terms of like when you've just lost patience with someone. I'm sick of
It,
you shuffling around the house, you moron. So on and so forth.
it wouldn't surprise me at all. Um, it has become very clear as reports came out that she did protect him as president. She didn't let people near him. She knew exactly what was going on. And she did not want to lose her grasp on power. And I mean, let's
Nope.
face it, it wasn't even, well, she was the power behind the throne. Remember his final cabinet meeting, she ran the meeting.
Yes. And even on Air Force One, he had his jacket on the chair, but she was sitting in it. Yeah. So I'm sure she's really pedoed, but hey, karma's a bitch. Now, on the economic side, to kind of wrap things up, if you will, the Fed did cut interest rates, but you have some insights into that.
Yeah, the Fed cut interest rates 25 basis points. Uh, quite frankly, a lot of people were hoping for 50 basis points, and several of the Fed governors actually said we really do need to cut 50 basis points, but they only cut 25. But those same governors over the last 2 weeks made numerous statements saying that we have to cut rates several times this year. And after they cut the rates 25 basis points, Powell made a speech talking about the cuts and indicated that this would be the last interest rate cut for 2025. And as soon as he said that, the Dow Jones dropped 150 points because
That is
everybody
correct. And the
knows
headline
the
from
economy needs interest rates to come down, and he just seems determined to tank the economy and try to blame Trump.
there's no question about it. In fact, the headline is, Dow gives up gains after Powell's comments. Yeah, he's a partisan hack, and you can blame Trump. He's not. Sometimes his judgment is, let's just say, sometimes less than stellar. But he's right. I mean, he's one of the weaker Fed chairmen I've seen in my lifetime, and it doesn't surprise me who nominated him.
Well, I mean, again, Trump gave him the job, but I mean, let's take a good look at Trump's first term. Trump did not know the people. He did not know the
Exactly.
players. So there were a lot of people that ended up in his administration that shouldn't have, and that were trying to stab him in the back and keep him from succeeding as president. That's why you saw over the 4 years that Biden was in office, Trump took what he learned from his first term and he started approaching people and talking to people. That's why he had so many folks ready to go the day after the election. It wasn't even the day after the inauguration. The day after the election, he had people ready to get started.
No question about it. I think, in retrospect, even though there was tremendous damage done by Biden and his operatives, maybe Trump 2.0 could never have happened without that bad chapter. I do believe that. I think he learned a lot. I think even if he was in the learning process and he had back-to-back terms, I think there was negative momentum there. I'm not sure he could have ever had the the drive, the accomplishments he has now. What do you think?
No,
Plus, I think you have a tremendously weakened Democratic Party because of the hangover, and it is a hangover of Biden.
yeah, there's no doubt that Trump benefited from Biden's administration. The fact that things went so horribly wrong during the Biden administration, unemployment shot up, inflation shot up. And yes, he kept trying to blame the pandemic, but the fact of the matter is that story doesn't hold water. We saw Trump take advantage of the 4 years to come back so much stronger, whereas Biden almost single handedly tanked the Democratic Party. So not only did Trump come back strong with a clear mission, a clear plan, and people
Confidence.
backing confidence and people backing him that actually knew what they were doing this time, but he was also going up against a weakened Democratic Party, a global situation where everybody around the world knew that the US was weak and suddenly actually looked at the first Trump administration longingly because at least he was strong. And now take a look. Trump got off the plane in Tokyo. It looked like a party. They were cheering, and everywhere he goes, Biden never got that. He barely got
Biden,
recognition.
they didn't even take a picture with the bumbling moron. I think your analysis is spot on. I think people around the world, that is world figures. I mean, not our foes or an adversaries, but people that need the United, got a real dose of what happens if the United States has checked out. And it is like a party. And getting back to kind of conclude your thoughts on it, is a real contrast of strength, vigor, accomplishment, and joy, to use a Mamala phrase, and excitement versus just a bunch of depressed losers. What can I tell you? Am I right?
You are. And it's more than just an attitude. Because if you take a look, we were saying how old the Democrats were, and some of the Republicans, it's time to retire. Trump is not that much younger. He's maybe a year or two younger than some of them. He's older than a lot of them, but he's got the energy. He's actually he comes across as so much healthier than they do, such a much better mindset than they have. And that is really what makes the difference. He comes across with energy. And something that I think is important to point out, Joe Biden, for the 4 years he was president, didn't start his day until 10, called the lid on it at 4, and almost every weekend was off to Delaware. He took 6 weeks vacation during the summer. We're now going into November. Have you noticed that Trump actually hasn't taken a vacation?
Because I believe he has that whole thing that he knows what's at stake, and he wants. He actually, the founder of Home Depot, one of the founders, there's two, basically said that he didn't vote for Trump, but as things are progressing, he could go down as a monumental president, and I do believe that's true. And I think I can't articulate it correctly, but when I see Trump, like I said, not to belabor a point, and the Democrats who have no answer, it's just not playing well, and it's reflected in the polls. Do you agree with that?
It's not playing well, and it's a deep problem for the Democrats because they keep trying to destroy Trump. And it's not just Trump, it's going on internally too. And it, quite frankly, may cost Andrew Cuomo the election for New York mayor, because Mondami came out and he said exactly what he wanted to do. Now, granted, most of what he wants to do is not in the purview of the mayor, and quite frankly, will destroy New York City. We've already seen Connecticut and New Jersey realtors taking calls from New York folks already looking to flee. But when Andrew Cuomo joined the race, he did not say what his plan was. His entire thing was painting Mondami as a communist and an anti-Semite, which he is, but he didn't put his plan together. He didn't start articulating his plan until last week. And not coincidentally, when he started doing that, that's when Mondavi's lead was cut in half.
We will see how it plays out, but our listeners can certainly contribute to the show, can't they?
Yes, let's hear what you have to say. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, message us there. Or you can go to xvadio.com/connect. That's EXVADIO.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Radio at the Carnivore Radio website at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
See you next week, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you then.